Robert Plank Show, episode 135, Overcome Illness and Adversity at Any Age with Marc Hoberman. Hey everyone, and welcome back to the Robert Plank Show. Today's guest is Marc Hoberman. He's a test prep expert and teen illness survivor, and he's going to be talking to us about teen illness, education, SAT prep, dealing with stress, speed reading and study skills, creating success in school, and a whole lot more. So how are things today, Mr. Mark?
Doing very well, thank you. Appreciate it.
Cool, no problem. I'm glad that you're here. So could you tell us a little bit about what it is that you do and what makes you unique and special?
Okay, so I've been a teacher for 33 years, and I've had a tutoring business for about 25. And I do a lot of tutoring, in person and online. I have tutors who work for me, and we do a lot of educational consulting for parents as well, for kids who are stressed out over school and things of that nature. I've been in the camp training industry for many years, so I deal with a lot of children, different ages, teens also, and also because of an illness I had as a child, as a teen at the age of about 17. I was diagnosed with epilepsy at the age of 17 after having a seizure, grand mal seizure, unfortunately, behind the wheel of a car. I wrote my book, Search and Seizure: Overcoming Illness and Adversity.
Cool. So it sounds like because you've gone through it, you have these messages to help other people too.
That's exactly right. I started the book a while ago and stopped it, and then about 3 years ago, my son came down with irritable bowel syndrome (IBS), that and a couple of skin issues, and he started to get a little depressed. And I was very methodical about looking into it and fixing it and finding him the right people. And my wife said, "How come you're handling this so well? I'm a wreck." And I said, "I think it's because I went through it." And then I realized, as a teacher, I could certainly help other people. It's a lot of times the emotionality of the illness is worse than the physicality of the illness.
Interesting. So, I mean, as far as these illnesses and these things that hit us, I mean, is there like a catch-all or like a one-size-fits-all or a thing that we should all do no matter what hits us, or is it more of like a case-by-case basis?
It's a little of both. My big mantra in the book is you can. I didn't let my illness define me. I defined it, and I also didn't become who I am in spite of my illness. I am who I am because of my illness. So you really want to embrace illness, stress, anything you have, and deal with it that way instead of fighting it in other ways.
Okay. So as far as like what happened to you and what happened to your son and what happens to the people that you kind of help out, like do you look at it in terms of like I mean it like whatever gets in the way, is this something to be kind of like minimized, or do we kind of roll with the punches, or like what happened with you from when you first kind of came across this epilepsy thing into like what happened now? Like what kind of breakthroughs and obstacles did you go through for that?
Okay, so minimizing it, absolutely not. My hope is that in dealing with it a certain way, it minimizes itself on its own, but certainly not to minimize it for the person to minimize it. To be honest, I'm 54 years old, and until I wrote the book, there weren't 10 people in the world who knew I had epilepsy. I had family members who called and were shocked that I had this. There's a stigma attached to it. I was embarrassed. I did lose some friends, not a lot, luckily, but there was so much more involved with it than just the illness. And I guess the turnaround was when I did open up about it, and I think that that's what you need to do. I think, again, it's like I'm an English teacher, so it comes from Julius Caesar. Keep your friends close and your enemies closer. So, your illness, your issues that you have, that might be the enemy, but you have to keep that close. You have to embrace it, and you have to deal with it. It can't be minimized. You have to deal with it head on, and you have to grow into who you are and realize that any stressful situation that you have, that's part of who you are.
So it's part of like the that adversity you're going through, I guess.
Correct.
So all right, so you came down with epilepsy, and so I mean, what did you do about it? What have you been doing about just kind of making it work for you, I guess, this thing that's a part of your life?
Well, I will tell you that from a diagnosis of 17 to 19, that was the awful time. I did not have good medical care in Florida. My parents handled things well, um, medically, as far as getting me help and moving back to New York. where we originated. I found a great doctor, Eli Goldenson, who was an expert in Columbia Presbyterian Hospital. Uh, those 2 years were very rough, Robert, because I was not controlled in the least. First of all, I had a brand new 1977 Ford Mustang, which is on the cover of the book Search and Seizure. And everyone thinks, oh, Search and Seizure. They thought it was, could be about a drug bust because of the car. But the car is the car that I had the actual seizure in. And to have a car for 2 or 3 months that was that beautiful, playing all the great music of the 70s, and being told I couldn't drive for 6 months was devastating for a teenager at that time.
Right, I can
Excuse
imagine.
me. Yeah, so that was very rough. And there's petite mal seizures, which a lot of times people don't diagnose in time because it could just be like dazing. And then there's grand mal seizures. And unfortunately, I had grand mal seizures always. A good thing, quite honestly, was that I had petite mal seizures always preceding the grand mal. So my parents knew when a grand mal was going to happen because they could see me dazed and get very incoherent. I couldn't answer questions properly at all. And I knew it's like being trapped in your own body. I knew that it was about to come on, and I couldn't explain it or say anything. Uh, oddly enough, you see TV shows and you remember certain things. The only reason I started to watch Johnny Carson was that one of the medications I was on back in '78, Dilantin, was too toxic for me. And after about 9 o'clock at night, after I took it, I became so dizzy I couldn't walk. I wouldn't go to sleep until after my parents went to sleep because I couldn't walk into the bedroom and I didn't want to tell them. So I had to crawl back into bed for a good 2 months until we realized that it was too toxic for me. I wouldn't even be honest about what was going on because of what my parents were going through.
Oh man. I mean that's pretty rough. So I mean then what happened? Then like I mean are you still unable to drive or how did your life kind of continue from that point?
Okay, so I was able to drive after 6 months. After that, I was kind of controlled. Um, and it's when you have the seizure, at least for me, I start to remember 2 or 3 days later things that happened either during the seizure or shortly thereafter. This is in the book also. Although there is some humor in the book, obviously it was a very difficult situation. But there was one time my father said, you had a seizure in the doctor's office yesterday. And I said, no, I didn't. He said, yeah, he did. And he took out his wallet. My teeth marks were in it because when I went through the grand mal and was biting down, he had to he put the wallet in my mouth, which is not something you do anymore. This is way back when. But luckily, we moved to New York, and I'm telling you, I walked into the doctor's office. He talked into a tape recorder for 40 minutes, asked me at least 60 questions that I'd never heard before, gave me a new pill, which back then was called valproic acid, which then changed the name to Depakine and Depakote. He gave me that pill, and I never had a seizure after that for 28 years.
Amazing.
Yeah, I would say maybe 10 or 15 years into it, I was teaching in the Bronx, and he said, listen, you have no kids yet. We're going to experiment with taking you off. You may have grown out of it. If you can go about 18 months without a seizure, I think you're all good. Well, 16 months later, I had my worst seizure ever in the hallway of school walking to class. It was in the Bronx. It was a tough neighborhood. They shut the school down because I fell. I chipped my tooth. I was bleeding. They didn't know if I was stabbed or shot or what happened. Um, and that was really bad. And I said, you know what? If medication is going to fix it, I'm going to have to stick on the medication. And, I have children I want to have and things I want to do and cars I want to drive. So I stayed on that medication up until actually a week ago. We just switched my meds. But, I had not an episode, but I had what was called the perfect storm. I had an infection and I was on prednisone and I was on cough medicine and I started to get incoherent, but I really knew I was incoherent, which is unlike an epileptic petit mal seizure. And according to the doctors, they did an EEG and they said there was no seizure activity. So they really think it's just that because I'm seizure prone, uh, it, it hampered my immune system a little bit and manifested itself as almost like a haze, sort of like a petit mal, but they're not willing to call it a petit mal seizure. But I guess since I started that other pill 28 years ago, they came out with a new pill. This is called Capra. You don't have to test your blood levels. It's supposed to be a really good pill. But I must say, even as an educator and adult, I had to make a medical decision versus an emotional decision because being seizure free for 28 years is really quite wonderful. And to know that I'm going to, to switch medications while I'm standing in front of a classroom. It's a humbling experience. As I say in the book, even though I was controlled, I speak in front of 300 people at camp conferences, at reading conferences, at PTA meetings. And it's in the back of my mind, what would happen if? So, that's something that's always there as well.
So I mean, and hearing about your story and your son's story and all these different things like that, like would you say that? I mean, we all kind of, to one extent or another, we all kind of get to, we have that moment in life, I guess, where like something like unexpected and permanent happens, right? And maybe for some of us it's not as drastic as having these like lifelong seizures, but would you say that we've all kind of come across this point where there's something that kind of came out of left field and something that will never go away, something that we'll always have to kind of manage and deal with? I mean, would you say that like everyone kind of comes across that?
Oh, of course. I mean, let's talk about, parents getting divorced, the death of a loved one, an illness, kids in school being bullied. I mean, uh, falling in love, all these things. I mean, there's there's no one who could possibly be untouched by these things.
And I guess that you brought up there, like there's like good and bad stuff. It's not just all unexpected deaths, accidents. There are good and bad unexpected things coming across.
Absolutely.
So I mean, did you go through with both like your situation with your parents and then with your own son with his issues? Did you go through just that point where you got the news or something's wrong, but you're kind of really uncertain about what to do next? Have you gone through that kind of phase?
Yes, excellent question because luckily, I've gotten many five-star reviews, and there was a company that gave me a five-star review, and he said that something my mother told me. This was 2 hours after I had the seizure in the car, and I went back to the condo in Florida, and she came in the room, very emotional woman. This is someone who, as I say in the book, cried at game shows, and she sat down and said, "Look, this is the deal. You're a good-looking boy. You're funny. People like you. You're nice. You're kind. You're intelligent. This is something that's going to have to keep you grounded. This is something that's going to make you stronger and better. And you're going to deal with it. We're going to deal with it together." And the reviewer, I remember, wrote that this is my mother's advice was advice that every parent should give every child at any moment of adversity. And I lived from that moment and discussion. That's how I moved forward.
Interesting. And I like that, how like you kind of, this thing that might have been random, or it would be easy to kind of take the victim way out, you kind of assigned a meaning to it. It's a thing that keeps you grounded.
Yeah, make no mistake, there was a time period though of victimization that I probably put on myself, more because of the stigma. Kids can be mean, and kids weren't intensely mean to me. A lot of people didn't know it, but I didn't want to tell my teachers. And I went to school. I played in the school band, the clarinet and the saxophone. And the band director called me in and said, "Listen, your parents called. What should I do if you have a seizure?" First of all, I didn't know the answer to the question. Second of all, I was embarrassed that he knew. And I didn't tell very many people. And that part of it is that I didn't want it to define me. And I'm not going to lie, as a teenager, part of it was the stigma that was attached. It's seen as a weakness. And I've learned through the years, especially as an educator for so long, that it's not my weakness, it's my strength.
I like that. And then what's even more interesting about your case is that you grew up to become a teacher. So the same thing that you're worried about as a kid with the seizures, you're worried about again as an adult when you were switching your medication or trying to get off your medication.
Yeah.
There was the same ridicule possibilities there.
Oh, absolutely. And I don't care about it as much. I'd be lying if I said I didn't care at all, but that's not what I'm about anymore. But it was more about my own decision. As I said, it was a medical and emotional decision. As an educator, it should be a no-brainer. It should be, I'm doing the medical correct thing. But when you have so many years and such a history of freedom, I mean, you wouldn't know it, and I wouldn't know it. There was no side effects to the medication I was taking. There are side effects. I just never had them, thank God. And I had to make that decision. But there are so many kids that I teach who have diabetes and who have some who do have epilepsy, and even be it obesity or any of these things, and the teen stress and the teen suicides and so much going on. I really thought that this book would help a lot of the people, even the people that I tutor. When I get to be, I become very close with the families, and I try to help with these issues. And speaking from experience, although it was bad experience, I have to say at the end right now, it was good experience. If I can help other people, that's a wonderful thing.
And so, are you noticing with the people that you're helping that whether they have like diabetes or seizures or obesity, like you said, like if no matter what condition they have, are like the psychological parts are there similarities, or are there some kind of steps that anyone could take no matter what condition they see themselves in?
I would say is absolutely something they can do no matter what condition they see themselves in. Um, I have what I think is a very powerful saying in the prologue of the book that after the seizure, it's like your own personal earthquake, but you have no memory of the seizure, the blessing and the curse. So, it's a blessing that you don't really remember, but it's a curse that you don't, because I want to remember it. And I want to be able to embrace it. And I want to be able to research it. I don't really know how old you are. I know you're a lot younger than I am, so I might say a word that'll make you laugh, but microfiche. That's how I first had to research it, because I was diagnosed, 37 years ago. Now you pop on the internet and forget about it. Side effects and what can you do? I'm part of 15 groups, epilepsy groups. One of them is in Hungary. One's in, all over the place. So uh, there are so many lessons to be learned. And if you can't learn from everything that happened to me, I gain strength from other epileptics. I am shocked and embarrassed that I've only known now how many people are not controlled, and I'm talking about babies, and I'm conversing with people on the internet who it's beyond tragic. But there is a light at the end of the tunnel. There's bringing families together. There's learning about your illness, and saying, is it going to define me, or am I going to grow and be who I'm going to be because I have this?
So, would you say that it is helpful if someone researches and knows as much as possible about what they have?
I would say 98% yes. Here's the only 2% no. When I first met my doctor in Columbia Presbyterian, I said, "What are the side effects of this medicine?" He said, "Call me when you think you have something." He said, "Because if I tell you 10 side effects, you're going to feel nine." So while it's true that too much information could be a little harmful, absolutely, positively research everything. You don't know who, you have to really seek out the experts. You have to ask questions, but you have to educate yourself. I went to the library when I first was diagnosed, and then read many books on it. Not so much the pharmacology, but just the illness itself, the different tests. I took 5 tests when I was in the hospital. One was a CAT scan with contrast. No test showed that I had any seizure activity except for the EEG. The least invasive test, the test that hurt the least, that's the only thing that showed it. But becoming more knowledgeable about it and about other people who have it now, um, yeah, that's your strength.
And I hadn't even thought about that. Like there's two sides of the knowledge coin. There is that there's the medical part and all the facts, and there's also, you mentioned a little bit there, like the stories and all the other people who, like, you're not alone in this condition.
That was important. I mean, I had two close friends in Florida and a very close friend or two that I had left behind in New York, and they were very, very, very helpful. You don't need 50. You need whatever your support network is: family, friends, doctor, whoever. You need that set number, and you need to lean on that and embrace that constantly.
So it's not just a one shot deal. It's you have to keep going back to that.
Oh, absolutely. This is your support staff, and your support system is, it's as important as you being your own support. But a lot of people are not their own support system, and that's where I think that I differed from some. Uh, my sense of humor comes across in the book a bit, and I tried to keep that, and that also helped me in my, I don't want to call it recovery, but in my management of my illness.
Okay. So, I mean, let's talk a little about that. Let's talk about you and your book and the things you do, because we've mentioned the book a few times, and I understand that you also do like online tutoring and cool stuff like that too. Is that
Right.
right?
Right. Well, it's funny. I only started to do the online tutoring because there was one year, 4 years ago, where it snowed every Tuesday. And I lost all my Tuesday clients, and I was kind of booked, and I really had no place else to put them. So I started to get pretty upset. So I have found this online platform, and it's outstanding because it's a, excuse me, it's a live whiteboard, and I write on it. They see it in real time. They write an essay. I see it in real time. My tutors, be it chemistry or math, they have uh, pads that they use. It goes right online, and they love that. I could see them They could see me. If you walked in the room with your eyes closed, you would think they were in the room with me. And it really helps me also in my educational consulting, because when I talk to parents about how to organize their children and do successful studying skills, I can show them together as a family right online. So it really has helped a lot. We do a lot of college advisement also. So it really connects me to people. It's not just about the tutoring, it's about the connecting to people and helping them. Some people are great with study skills. Some have no organization skills and time management, which many of the colleges are saying is that one of the major problems of the freshmen certainly that come in would be the time management. So we help with all that. And I said I have tutors who work for me. So the internet has been a godsend for many reasons.
Awesome. And so as far as the tutoring goes, is that just something where you get those students from like local from you, or are you using the internet to get new people?
Well, it was local, and then it branched out because now people are being able to tell their cousins who were in, could be Alaska. This guy's great at ACT prep or SAT prep, or he helped Johnny with this, or your cousin had very bad test anxiety, and he's helped with that. I also have an expert I work with test anxiety, so I'm able to reach out more, which is another reason why I'm doing the radio shows, because I want to reach out to people that way too. It started by accident locally, but I have local kids who are refusing to come back. They live a mile away, and they said this is the best. It's technology. I watch you. I turn you off. I go back to bed. So it just works locally, but I really want to widen the reach, especially for the educational consulting. I think that there's a lot of frustration and stress on the parents. I think some parents stress their kids, of course, unintentionally. And I've been doing this a long time, and I'm teaching a long time. So I've been a dean of students for behavioral issues also for 6 years. So I feel that it gives me an opportunity to help them along with their kids' growth academically.
And that's, I mean, that's a really important thing, it sounds like. And so, is there a place where people can find out about you and your tutoring online? Is there a website for that?
Yes, the website for that is www.gradesuccess, gradesuccess.com, gradesuccess.com. The author site for the book is marchoberman.com, marchoberman.
Okay. And then so all right, so markhoberman.com, and then looks like the search and seizure book is right there. And is the book on Amazon as well?
The book is on Amazon. It's on Kindle. It's going to be available on, I believe, the iBooks soon. If people go online, I could also send them an ebook form. So it's available in many different forms. And then, yeah, certainly Amazon is great. Kindle is, instantaneous, obviously.
Well, cool. So yeah, search and seizure looks like a great bookmark. And what I've been hearing, kind of over and over from our talk today, like the common thread I keep hearing is that like you found something that worked for you, whether that's the tutoring or managing this illness that you did not expect. It's kind of like in all these situations, you kind of find something that works good for you, and then you did a little bit of playing around or experimenting or research, and it kind of grew on its own, whether it was the speaking about the seizures or it was about the tutoring. I think there's something really cool to that, to not have like any of these like big huge plans, but just kind of get a handle on yourself, try some new things, and then it kind of like grows on its own, especially with the way that this online tutoring is kind of picked up for you.
Yeah, it's really a lifetime commitment. I never stop learning. As I said, I've been teaching 33 years. I'm coming out with a book in a couple of months for teaching strategies, and I teach other teachers. I still go into classrooms where I know teachers have great reputations, and I sit and watch them also. You cannot stop learning. You have to, just always be open to learning and getting more information. And knowledge is power. Period.
I mean, I agree about 1,000,000,000%. So cool. So thanks for coming on the show, Mark, and sharing what you have to share with us. And so markhoberman.com, and Search and Seizure is the book. Thanks again.
My pleasure. Thanks so much.
Thanks for listening to our interview with Mark today. Go to robertplank.com/iTunes to subscribe to the show, and robertplank.com to view past episodes.